Okay, so it's January 31st. A new week is starting up. I wanted to make sure that we all got off and on the same foot. We didn't miss anything. First thing I want to say that you might have missed is a couple policy papers. One is this responsible cyber offense paper. I've been slinging it around on Twitter for anyone to edit. That's a different way of doing policy papers than you probably see in academia or many other places. This paper is destined, ideally, for a NATO journal. And I think there's some concepts in it that are, I'm not going to say important, but like trying to open up the ideas that other people have put together, especially around how worms should be created. But there's more that goes into an operation than the toolkit necessarily. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, I don't speak for the United States government or any government, but I still think you should read it and you should heckle me and you should write things in the comments and tell me I'm wrong. I think that's good. Cyber paradigm shift. A whole series of papers came out, all bundled together, almost like a little mini book. They call the Newport Papers. I believe the Naval Command put it together. But if you had to read one paper in it, if I could get the policy world to read one paper, I mean, I don't know how much these people read. I think a lot of it is discussions as opposed to reading. But this is the paper I would say that they should read because it is a great historical look at how the entire way of thinking about a strategic domain has to evolve. And I feel like that's something that we really have been missing. And it's a really well-written paper. So there'll be no OODA loops, no Sun Tzu, no Clausewitz, none of that nonsense where someone's just given up on thinking and they want to throw in a stupid quote. Anyway, so read this paper. Again, you might have missed it. The Glasshouse Center. It was just, honestly, it's just a Zoom call with a bunch of people who've been talking, and they talk about stuff. But here's what they're talking about, which is this whole North Korea thing demonstrates a gap. It demonstrates a gap in what you think is important. And anytime there's something where you don't think it's important, but your opponent realizes it's actually super important, you are set up for a strategic surprise, as we like to say. So in this particular case, the thing that I feel is most obvious to me is that when cyber policy and experts and policymakers talk about public-private partnership, they are ignoring the fact that there's a community of individuals who operate in this space who are, in fact, what you need to partner with. And what they want to partner with are essentially logos, right? Like if you ever deal with a sales team, they talk about logos. And it's like Qualys, Tenable, like SolarWinds, Talus, Raytheon. Pick a logo, right? So when you hear like people talk about, oh, we're going to defend, and then we'll like extend a little bit of security umbrella to some of these big companies, they know how to partner with them. That is just not that is not the way the U.S. government really needs to think about defend forward on the homeland. Realistically, we need to be defending the communities and the individuals and reaching out and seeing these things as opportunities. And I think this, what I'm realizing is this was just an opportunity lost. We weren't paying attention. We're at capacity with SolarWinds, right? So the Chinese and the Russians are targeting the companies, phishing, whatever. The DPRK is targeting the individuals. I think the Chinese and the Russians are also targeting these individuals, right? So a bit of a wake-up call for everybody, but I think there's a gap that's been directly highlighted that I don't think we've started addressing yet. I'm hoping that we do. So anyway, if you missed that conversation, it's on the YouTubes. It's an hour and a half. You can listen to it while you do something else. Okay, so Ben Hawks sent, because in my last hot takes, I was like, look, JavaScript is the new Flash. And the reason I think that is because you're going to re-implement all the issues with Flash, and then you're going to realize that was a bad idea. And Ben Hawks was like, actually, I don't believe you. And fair enough. The reality is that Google as a company can't really survive without JavaScript because that's how those, advanced ads get put in your browser, which is the like river of money that Google is dipping into. So they have a humongous vested interest in securing JavaScript for everybody. I don't know what the data is that would convince you that they can or cannot do that. If it is impossible to secure JavaScript, I don't know. I still don't think they would remove it from Chrome or make it default opt-in or opt-out, right? So something to look at. I think this is worth more discussion. I think the idea that, is it possible to secure Qmail? Is it possible to secure SendMail or, any of these things? I don't know, right? So, and it's important. We should start thinking about that. Okay. I wanted to include some amusing people who got owned by themselves. This one came out in the Washington Times. I don't know if it's true. I think we should remind the tailored access operations personnel that you don't have to talk to reporters when they call you. But this is what the article says. It says that the way Huawei's routers were getting owned was with old Cisco bugs because they stole the Cisco source code and then, had the same vulnerabilities, which I think is very interesting because I don't know that Huawei would have provided the United States government with their source code. I'm sure there's an export control or some other lever that maybe could get pushed on that stuff. But if you're going to steal source code from an American company and incorporate that into your product, then it's just you're setting yourself up for some hilarity. So I thought that was a really funny article. I think people missed it. I don't know if it's true, but it's interesting. And then this one where SonicWall, unfortunately has been on the sort of the rough end of things this week, where they had to announce that they got hacked with vulnerabilities in their own equipment, which is already harsh. And now people are like, hey, we've been kind of seeing this stuff out in the wild. We've kind of reproduced some of this stuff. Yet to see how this stuff all rounds out. But look, here's a very simple thing. If your router includes Perl or PHP or seems to be written in the 80s with old C stuff, if it doesn't have like ASLR turned on, then don't use it. Don't use that router, right? Like, it's so simple. Anyway, Mr. Dwizzle had a very interesting note about the asymmetric threat of, now that we've started rounding up all of these ransomware groups. This is another one of those ransomware groups that they rounded up. It says Policia. I guess that's the police and signal. Nationalna? I don't know. No, National Police. Oh, anyway. So obviously they were running systems that looked like crap. But then if you go to like most hacker labs, like even though they can afford better equipment, they're kind of running crap equipment sometimes because it works and they're sick of fiddling with it, right? Like, it's not like beautiful, nice equipment. Anyway, so that's something I thought was interesting. And then, is Huawei scared of Twitter was a thought that I had. And like, one of the things you saw come out was like, this company's like, hey, there's a bunch of people boosting Huawei. And I find like, figure out what's getting boosted on Twitter is always really weird. Like, when I tweet about Eugene Kaspersky and then he tweets back, and then like 6 fake accounts repeat his tweet word for word. And so I see it in my like mentions feed, and I'm like, that is a really weird thing to have happen, right? That doesn't happen with other people. Maybe it's because he's a billionaire that they've just started doing this for him. Like, it's like a free service for billionaires. I don't know. But the same thing, look, like Huawei is getting boosted by like teams that otherwise are known for boosting Chinese national interests. And Huawei came out and was like, oh yeah, we don't know what's going on here. And the truth is, we don't know if Huawei contracted or if the national team is just boosting Huawei interest because it's in the national team's interest as well. And so that's something that I think is was interesting to look at. And Huawei, the way they reacted, I was like, man, they seem pretty scared that Twitter will ban them for doing this kind of thing. And that would be very interesting. As Twitter starts leveraging that ban hammer more, you're going to start seeing people behave nicer on Twitter because they finally are seeing repercussions. And I wanted to end with this. Just a couple little things that maybe you didn't know. First of all, dire wolves are not wolves. We did some genetic studies. They're not wolves. They're canines, but they're not wolves. And I think that's really interesting. It's like how mountain goats aren't goats, things like that. Mantis shrimp aren't shrimp. I like all those things. Those are really funny. And this one is the don't step on snake news of the week, which is they've sort of analyzed the venoms, and they like when they say like the venom, weirdly it affects humans more than anything else. They're like ancient hominins were like stepping on these snakes so much because you know how crazy humans are, like the more dangerous an animal is, the more they either want to pet it or just like whip it around their head like a rope just for fun. Like, so this happens so much to cobras of all creatures, that they started evolving an entire technique against humans, which I think is hilarious and pretty funny, in terms of like what it tells you about the personalities of ancient proto-humans and humans. So that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for, I guess, listening watching if you're still watching. And I'll see you next week.